guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Elle, and today I'm going to be talking about all of my 5-star romances of fall. So I read some really great books during the fall time. I read a couple of spooky books, a lot of, I think, forbidden romances and angsty romances. I was just in the mood for that, I guess. But I want to first start off with a couple of books that I don't have in physical copy yet, or have and can't find them. So the first book is An Earl to Remember by Stacy Reid. This book was incredible. I listened to this one on audio. It is a historical romance, and so the premise of this one is kind of like the movie Overboard, if you've ever seen that movie. Basically, there is this very wealthy guy who is the hero, and the heroine is working on his ship. I think she's like a map maker, or I can't really remember what she does, but she's working on the ship and he gets thrown overboard. And they'd had a moment where they kind of had a moment together, and when he wakes up he can't remember who he is, but when he sees her he's like, oh my gosh, like, didn't we do something together, like sexually? And she's like, no we didn't, like, you're my husband. And so she lies and says that he is her husband to save her reputation. And so she has, I think, like 3 younger sisters, and she lives in this small town, and so now he has to start working on like the farm with them and doing all of these like chores, and he keeps thinking like, I feel like this isn't who I am, like I feel like I'm very wealthy or something. And she's like, no, like, we're married. And it is so good. I love the hero and how he just like was absolutely obsessed with the heroine, and there were so many funny moments of him like doing like farm work or chores or helping her younger sisters, and it was just so cute. And I love the ending of like him finding out, and it was just really good. This was such a great romance. I loved all of these spicy scenes in this one. Stacy Reid knows how to write such a great historical romance, and I thoroughly enjoyed this one. Then I have another Stacy Reid book, which is A Matter of Temptation. This one was also really fun as well. So the heroine's brother is kind of in a bind. He has to go do a duel of like, I think, fencing, and so she ends up going in his stead and fights like the hero, and she wins. But he finds out that she's a woman, and he's like, I won't tell anyone if you become, I think, his secretary. And so she starts working for him, and he is really attracted to her, and they kind of start having a romance, but there is a major class difference between them. And I just remember really loving this audiobook and this romance. I loved like the forbidden aspects of like, we can't really be together because of our class difference, but I want to be with you. And he was like so obsessed with her, just like wanting to be with her so badly. And I just love this romance. It was very angsty and delicious, and I loved the spicy scenes in this one. Again, another amazing romance from Stacy Reid. So I'm going kind of out of order because like I read those 2 books in September, but I want to mention Caution to the Wind, which I read in late November because I do not have a physical copy of this book yet, but I wanted to include it on this list. So this is the 7th book in the Fallen Men series, and it is amazing. This is a romance between May and Axeman, and it is a second chance motorcycle romance, and it is really good. Like, May and Axeman have so much history together, and it was just very angsty and forbidden, and he like hates her, and she's just trying to help. And it's just, I don't want to say too much because if you have not read like the whole series, it's not going to make sense, and you should read the series in order. But just know that it is worth the wait to read this romance because it was amazing. Like, he is her best friend's dad, and it's age gap forbidden. Like, they both have tattoos, and I just love this romance. It was so good, so worth the wait. And I am so excited for all of Gianna Darling's new releases in the next year. Okay, so let's get into my paperbacks that I have on hand. This is the Graham Effect by Elle Kennedy. This is her newest release, and when I first heard about this book I was like, I don't know if I really want to read this. But then I saw that Jess from Peace Love Books loved this book, and so I was like, okay, I love this world, so let me just give it a shot. I ended up listening to the audiobook of this book and just completely fell in love with this like world and series again. So the heroine is the daughter of Garrett Graham, and she is a women's like hockey player on like the women's hockey team of Bryan University. And the hero is on the men's team, and they kind of start hanging out together, but then her ex is also on the hockey team, so they have to keep their like romance forbidden. And it is so good. I loved this romance. I loved seeing Garrett and all of the characters from the Off-Campus series. It was just such a great romance, and I'm so excited for the rest of the series. It was just amazing. I love the audiobook. I loved all of the hockey scenes of like games and them practicing, and it was just so good. I love this one. And I read Forget Me Not by Julie Soto. This is another amazing romance. This is a very angsty second chance romance. So our hero and heroine were in a relationship 3 years ago, but something happened, and they're both still like heartbroken over what happened with them breaking up. And now it is the present time, and the heroine is a wedding planner, and she's about to have her biggest client yet, and they insist on having the hero as their florist, and so they have to work together. And it is very angsty because they still obviously have feelings for each other, but they're both still really hurt over what happened. And this book was just so freaking good. I loved all of the angst. I loved the second chance aspects of this. I loved like them both, you know, feeling so bad about what happened and like finally being together again. And I loved all of like the wedding planning aspects of this book. It was just so fun and so good, and I have never read such a great like a wedding planner romance, and I just love this one. It was so good. And like he has all of these tattoos on his body, and one that is like her name on his body, like a tattoo of a flower that her name came from, and she like finds it and she's like, oh my gosh. And it was just so good. Like I really like this one, and I'm very excited to read more from Julie Soto. Then I have One Touch by Lena Hendricks. This is my first Lena Hendricks book, and I thoroughly enjoyed this one. This is a small town romance, forced proximity, hate to love. So our hero and heroine end up having to like be together and work together because she is working on her, I think it's like her grandmother's like cabin, and so they're refurbishing it, and he is the carpenter that ends up being hired, and she just like despises him, and he is also her ex's older brother. And so they just have so much like tension between each other and like hate that it leads to romance, and it is so good. I really love this one. I listened to this audiobook in a day because I was so obsessed and I couldn't stop reading it, and I just really like this one. It was so good, and they were like diarying all of what they were doing with the like carpentry work and the remodeling like on a social media like Instagram, and it was just so cute, and I just really loved this one, and it was really good, and I'm excited to read more from this series. Her Soul to Take is the next book I'm going to talk about, and I listened to this one on audio, and it was kind of my only spooky read of October, and I loved this one. It was so good. So this deals with a demon hunter who is the hero, and he is tasked with finding like his like person he's going to sacrifice, but he ends up falling for her instead, and that is the heroine. So they kind of have to go on this like crazy goose chase to like figure out this mystery that happened, and it's really fun. I loved this romance, and I loved like that he was a demon and he was going to kill her or like sacrifice her, and he ended up falling for her. I just love that aspect of this book, and there was this like mystery they had to figure out, which was really fun. It reminded me of like Crescent City a little bit, but I just really like this one, and I'm excited to continue on with this series. It was a great spooky paranormal romance to read for October. Then I have Bittersweet Memories by Katarina Mora. This is another angsty romance, and this is also an amnesia romance. So our hero and heroine met when they were both like younger, and the hero was actually staying at a homeless shelter, and the heroine started working there, and so they kind of developed a romance. And something happens where the heroine gets in an accident, and she does not remember like her past or who she is, and he has been looking for her for years, and he finally found her, and realize that she is dating his younger brother. And so they have to end up like working together because he hires her for like a job because he's now like a billionaire, and it's like forced proximity, but he cannot tell her about their past. And it is so good. It's very angsty, and I just really like this one. He's very possessive over her, but like also can't be because she doesn't really remember them having a relationship. And I just remember really loving this romance and just thought it was so good and so angsty, so much like tension. And I just love Katarina Moore's romances, so I'm excited to continue with the rest of the series. The next two books are a part of the same series, which is Binding 13 and Keeping 13. And I really enjoyed both of these books, and I read them on my Kindle. Sorry, like this is bugging me. This cover is so shiny. Anyways, this is a very emotional, heavy series, very character driven. So if that's not your thing, I wouldn't read this series. It's just very like character driven. Like there's not a lot of external plot going on, but I love this series. So Shannon, our heroine, she dealt with a lot of bullying and harassment at her past high school. So now she's going to this new high school, and it's called like Tom College, and like on her first day she gets like hit in the back of the head with like this rugby ball, and that's when she meets Johnny, the hero. And so they kind of strike up a friendship and start hanging out. But she is very apprehensive of others. She's dealing with a lot at home because her father is very abusive physically and emotionally and mentally towards her siblings, and her mother. And so this series, these two books are really about the abuse and like emotionality of what Shannon and her family is going through. And I just like love this series. I love seeing the healing in this series, and I just loved how Johnny was always there for Shannon, and I love their romance. It is very slow burn. He is also the like star rugby player of like this school and like going to be like the next rising star in the rugby world, but he's also dealing with like an injury, so there's that. And I just love this romance. I really loved it. I thought it was so well done, and I just loved all of the healing and emotionality of this couple and what they were both going through in their life. Like both were struggling, and I just really love this series, and I'm very excited to continue on with the rest of the series, especially to see Joey and Aoife's story. So this is Binding 13, and then I read Keeping 13. I gave these both 5 stars. They were both amazing. And then I read Caught Up by Liz Tomforde. This is her newest release. It is a baseball single dad nanny romance. So the heroine is a famous pastry chef, and she just won like the most coveted award in the pastry world. And she's just dealing with a lot of imposter syndrome, and so she decided for the summer she's going to take a break and spend it with her dad, who is the like head coach of like the Chicago MLB team. And so the hero is a player on the baseball team, and he has a son, a very young son, and he has just not found like a nanny. And so his coach like suggests like, why doesn't my daughter nanny your son for the summer? She has nothing going on and blah blah blah. And so he reluctantly agrees because they kind of had like a weird run-in where she kind of seemed like not fit to like nanny his son. So he's like very apprehensive of who he lets around his son, but when he sees the connection that she has with the son, he's like, okay, like she can nanny him. And so it's like kind of slow burn at first, like friends to lovers a little bit, and it is just so good. I love this romance. I love seeing all of the really cute moments between Miller and his son, and I loved this romance. It was so good, and I loved like the time like wise of this book, because it was like we can't be together like the whole summer. Like I'm leaving at the end of the summer, and it just made it very like tension filled, and I just really love this romance. It was so good. And of course there's all of these really cute like quirky moments that Liz Tomforde throws in and like calls him baseball daddy, and it's just so funny. I just adored this romance. I loved it. I loved like how she was a pastry chef, and like a cook, and she needed to find her like creativity again, and that was really fun to see. And it was just such a unique romance that I just like absolutely adored, and I'm so excited for the rest of the books of this series. Then I have Shadows of You by Catherine Cowles. I absolutely adore this romance. This is a single mom, small town romance. And so the heroine kind of moved to the small town to get away from her past, and she's very like apprehensive of who she like lets around her daughter, but she's finally kind of settled in this small town and is happy and feels safe. And the hero's kind of the recluse of the town, and so they have this super cute meet cute where she houses a lot of like animals that don't have a home, and she finds this like deer and this baby deer, and she calls like Fish and Wildlife, and that's the hero works for Fish and Wildlife. And so when he gets here, he's like, what are you doing? Like, you can't take care of this deer. And she's like, yes I can. It was just like super cute, and he is very grumpy, but he really opens up around her, and it was just so good. There's also suspense in this one, and it was just such a great small town romance, and I really loved it. I loved like the hero with her daughter. Like, he was so cute. He would like stand up to her like school bullies and just was really cute and there for her. And I just love this romance. I love this series, and I'm super excited to read the next book that's going to come out, I think in February of next year, maybe January. But I love this series. Definitely go check it out. It is amazing. And I have another small town romance, which is Into the Tide by Laura Pavlov. This is a really fun romance. I think he is her brother's best friend, and small town, and she is coming back for the summer before she goes and like starts working at this big job as a lawyer, I think, or like a firm. I think she's a lawyer. And anyways, they start up a romance, and it is so good, but they have to keep it from her brother, and she's leaving at the end of the summer, and it's angsty, and it's just so good. I really love this one. I remember really enjoying the audiobook while listening to it, and it's definitely small town. I think like it deals with animals too, and I just really enjoyed this romance. I thought it was a really great small town romance, and I'm excited to read the rest of this series. They have King of Pride by Ana Huang. I absolutely adored this romance. It is so fun. It is kind of like an opposites attract romance, also like people from different worlds. So the heroine works at this like gentleman's club slash bar, and the hero is a regular. He is a billionaire, and so they kind of like spark up a little bit of a friendship and start hanging out. And things, you know, turn into kind of like a fling, but they're both like not serious about it, and they just start hanging out more and more, and it's just so good. I really like this one. The hero is also British, so on like the audiobook, he had an accent, and I loved that in this book. And I just remember really enjoying this one, and just thought it was super witty and fun. And like, who doesn't love a billionaire romance who like splurges on the heroine? So I really enjoyed this one. And I read King of Greed, which is a part of the same series as the book before. This is a marriage and trouble romance. So Dom and Alessandra have been together for 10 years, and it's their 10-year anniversary. And Alessandra just doesn't feel like loved anymore and really seen in the relationship anymore like Don. Just all he does is focuses on his work, and like doesn't put their relationship first at all, or like even prioritizes their relationship. And so she basically, it's like the last straw, and she's like, I want to get a divorce, and he is so scared of losing her forever. And so he really has to grovel and win her back, and it was so good. It's like second chance, very like tension filled, because he really needs to prove to her that he can be better, and that he sees what went wrong and apologizes like truly, and doesn't just apologize because he wants her back. And I just felt like Ana Huang did that in such a great way in this romance. Like, this was amazing. Highly recommend. Absolutely loved it. The last book I have is Final Offer, which is the third and final book of the Dreamland Billionaire series. So this is a second chance friends to lovers romance. So the hero, to get his grandfather's shares of the company, or like his shares of the company like Dreamland, which is kind of like Disneyland kind of, he needs to sell his family lake house. And so when he goes to do that, he sees his ex who hasn't seen in years, who he basically broke her heart. And they have to work together to sell the house because she is also co-owner of the house. And this book is very angsty, slow burn, and very emotional. The hero deals with drug abuse and alcohol abuse and addiction, and it is just such a beautiful book about healing and just giving people a second chance. And I just loved this book. It was so good. I just loved all of the characters in this romance and like the small town aspect, and the romance was amazing and it was worth the wait, and it was just so good. Like, I loved this book. Definitely a favorite of the year. All right, well, that is the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed hearing me chat about all of my 5-star romances of the fall. I definitely want you to let me know down below what your favorite romances were from this past fall, because I would love to know. And I want to thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye.